Got my hair did. Working on that mullet. It's Drewski McGillicuddy's best movies of the decade. Hey everybody, it's Drewski McGillicuddy, and I got myself a mullet. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about my favorite movies of the past decade, and this video is a little long overdue, but I've been in some kind of a slump. But don't worry about that. Worry about this list of movies that I've compiled. I did not compile it like I compiled my horror movie list, where I went through each year looking for the best movie of that year. This, I didn't even use technology. I just thought to myself, using my brain, and said, I'm going to write down as many movies as I could think of off the top of my head that stand out without even having to look it up. And then I'm going to correct myself and make sure each year that those movies were released was from this decade. So that's what I did. I wrote down 25 movies, and then I narrowed it down to a top 10 list with a couple honorable mentions. So we're going to go ahead and do the honorable mentions right now. Our first honorable mention comes from 2012, and that's Seven Psychopaths with Christopher Walken, Sam Rockwell, Colin Farrell, Woody Harrelson, and a couple other people that need not be mentioned. And this movie is just pure entertainment. Like, this is one of those movies where it came out of nowhere. I don't know where it came from, and it's basically about there's this guy going around killing other serial killers, I guess. It's been a while since I watched it. But then, in the whole mix of things, Woody Harrelson's this, like, kingpin kind of guy, and somebody steals his dog. Seven Psychopaths. It's an honorable mention for best movie of the decade. The next honorable mention is 2011's Killer Joe, and this shows a Matthew McConaughey return to film, because in the mid-2000s, almost to the 2010s, he was doing those romantic comedies, or like Surfer Dude, like dumb bullshit, that nobody really wants to watch. But then in 2011, he brought us Killer Joe, and he plays pretty much a serial killer who is also like a Texas Ranger. What is he? He's a Texas Ranger. He's goddamn.
Is he an actual police officer, or is he just more of a,
He's like a Texas Ranger.
No.
I don't know. It's been a long time since I watched Killer Joe, but he's some sort of law enforcement. But he's also some sort of, like, you can hire him to kill people. And there is a scene involving a chicken leg and Gina Gershon, and it's the most disturbing yet somehow sexiest thing I've ever fucking seen in my goddamn life. So that's Killer Joe from 2011. Our next movie, our next honorable mention, is my last honorable mention, and this one should have been on the list. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people in the comments section being like, you're crazy, what the hell's the matter with you? And that's 2013's The Wolf of Wall Street. Marty Scorsese, like one of his best ever movies. And he's one of the best directors that ever lived. I really do pretty much every single Martin Scorsese movie, with the exception, like, the first time I saw Taxi Driver, I didn't like it, but upon rewatch, I loved it. But we're not here to talk about that. We're talking about Wolf of Wall Street, Leonardo DiCaprio, in the prime. This is the movie he should have won the Oscar for. Jonah Hill, like, this movie is butt-gustingly, fucking butt-gustingly hilarious. There you go. Hashtag butt-gustingly. But hey, man, your butt gut. Don't worry about it. Let's just move on to the goddamn list, shall we? So starting off our list is number 10, a movie from 2019, and it is probably the best movie I had seen this year, because I didn't see every movie this year. And that's The Peanut Butter Falcon, starring Shia LaBeouf and the chick from 50 Shades of Grey, and she is, quite the looker. But anyway, don't worry about that. But this movie is just heartwarming and just uplifting, and it just makes you want to get out and do something with yourself. And it's just, movies like this don't come along that often. So when they do, you gotta cherish them, you know what I mean? So if you have not seen The Peanut Butter Falcon, I highly demand everybody go out and check it out, along with every other movie on this list. So moving on to number 9 is one of the best sequels to come out in recent memory, probably the best action movie of the decade, and that's John Wick Chapter 2. And I'll be honest with you, I've been meaning to tackle the John Wick franchise, and for some reason, unbeknownst to me, I still have not seen the third one. But the first one, when the trailer came out, I was like, this looks gay as hell, and I don't mean like that in the homophobic sense, I mean that in the 90s gay. But anyway, just the trailer was just, it seemed extremely corny, especially when he's like, people keep asking if I'm back. Well, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm back. And I was like, lame. But then here comes the movie to Redbox, and I'm like, what the hell? I ain't got nothing better to do. And it knocked my socks off. But then hold on a minute. Here comes John Wick Chapter 2 to rival the first one. It's like up there. Like, here's Terminator 2. Like, you can't even see it. It's on the scale. But like, here's John Wick Chapter 2, his best like action sequel thing I've ever made. Because just, I don't know, every single second of this movie, I was on the edge of my seat having a good time. So John Wick Chapter 2 makes it into number 9. Maybe even should have been higher. Who knows? Going on to number 8. Now this is a movie that I can't remember if I put on my horror movie list, because I was trying not to put on the same movies on each list, because, you know, they should have their separativity or whatever. But number 8 is from 2014, and it's pretty much an action, drama, horror type film. And it's called The Guest, starring Dan Stevenson. And like, he takes his shirt off in this movie, and like, I'm not gay. The Guest is about a soldier that comes knocking at this family's door, and he tells them that he served with their son who passed away, and he was coming by just to check on him, make sure they're doing all right. And then it turns out everything, it's not all right. Everything just, have I reviewed this? I feel like I reviewed this.
You did.
But maybe I should revisit it someday. But The Guest, like the soundtrack alone puts it on this list. But then Dan Stevenson takes his shirt off, and it's like, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that, everybody. We're going to move on to the next movie on the list. Number 7, a movie I almost skipped over, but then I realized later on while I was going to edit, like, oh my god, I completely skipped over number 7 from 2011, Drive, starring Ryan Gosling. Because remember I said something earlier about The Nice Guys? I could have swore I had another Ryan Gosling movie on the list, and sure enough, there it was. Drive, directed by Nicholas Winding Refn or something like that. And it's beautifully directed in the way the movie's lit, just the way it looks. And it's like a beautiful movie, yet it's gritty and violent. And a lot of people that I used to talk to complained and said that nothing really happens in this movie. And it's like, what are you talking about? And the movie's a slow burn, sure. But when stuff happens, I mean, it fucking happens. And I just absolutely love, like, the car chase scenes in this movie are top notch. The performances, like, the fact that Ryan Gosling can go through this entire movie hardly using any dialogue and just give a performance just with facial expressions, you know, says a lot. In Drive, he's this cool character, has the coolest jacket ever made, and it's just, he's cool, man. He's cool. Drive. If you didn't like it the first time, I highly suggest trying to watch it one more time, because I don't see how anybody didn't like this movie. This is one of the best movies of the decade for sure, and it's my number 7. So let's get on with the list. Number 6 comes to us from 2016 from, you know, a really good writer-director. I mean, he's a better writer than a director. people like Shane Black, right? Shane Black wrote and directed The Nice Guys, and it is absolutely hysterical. One of the best buddy cop movies we've gotten since probably the second Bad Boys, because I know the new Bad Boys came out, but there hasn't really been very many actually good. Like, there was The Other Guys, but that's kind of a forgettable movie. The only thing I remember about that movie is that The Rock and Samuel L. Jackson jump off a building or something like that, and I'm a peacock, you gotta let me fly. But, you know, The Nice Guys is just, you know, hysterical. One of Ryan Gosling's best performances, one of Russell Crowe's best performances. The story is intriguing and keeps you, you know, on your toes. It's about, you know, this death that they got to investigate and figure out what happens. You know, it's that kind of movie with all kinds of wacky antics along the way. So if you haven't seen The Nice Guys...
Fudge. Sorry.
So if you haven't seen The Nice Guys, obviously I highly recommend it. It was probably one of the funniest movies of the past decade, and one of the best movies that nobody saw in 2016. So now it's not going to get a fucking sequel. Moving on to number 5 from 2017, we go from a comedy to a comedy drama that makes you want to cry. 3 Billboards from Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Like, one of the this movie has one of the soul crushing, like, it just cuts you like a fucking knife. Several times. There's several fucking times in this movie where it's just like, Ugh! Ugh! But then the very next scene, you're trying to wipe away the tears, but then you start laughing hysterically, because this movie, it's like a dark comedy, but like some of the stuff you probably really shouldn't be laughing at. But yeah, this also stars Sam Rockwell. He's been on my list. Like, he's one of those underrated actors, and like his performance in this movie, I mean, he basically plays Sam Rockwell, because let's face it, Sam Rockwell's pretty much just Sam Rockwell in everything he's been in. And that's great. That's great, because like Sam Rockwell's perfect just the way he is, so you wouldn't want to change him. But then you got Frances McDormand, who just commands the screen in every scene she's in, and like the story with her character, which I don't want to spoil in case people out there might have slept on this movie because it's called 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Does that sound entertaining to anybody? Well, guess what? It is. It is entertaining, it's heart-wrenching, heartwarming, and, you know, hilarious. All at the same time. But yes, make sure you have your tissues when you watch 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Moving on to number 4. And that's Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained, which I could have also put Hateful Eight on here. As a matter of fact, I would put both of Tarantino's Westerns. They're a tie. They're a tie for my number 4 spot on the list. Because they are both just, like, a lot of people think The Hateful Eight's too long. Well, I didn't really think so, because I was intrigued and invested in each and every character, every single line of dialogue out of everybody's mouth in The Hateful Eight and Django Unchained. I mean, I would say that Django Unchained has just a little bit of edge, because it has a little more action, a little more comedy, and it just... Jamie Foxx and Christoph Waltz are just fucking epic together on screen, and they both should have won. Well, fuck. There's another movie Leonardo DiCaprio should have won an Oscar for, even though he wasn't in the movie very long. His scene sticks out among, you know, the entire film, but I mean, the whole movie's great, but the scene with Leonardo DiCaprio, who possibly might be my favorite actor of all time. I don't know. I'd have to sit down and think about it real hard, a lot like I did this list. That's why it was really hard to choose between Hateful Eight and Django Unchained, so they both deserve to be on the list. But I'm just going to give Django Unchained just a bit of an edge, because just, I don't know, I love it just a little bit more. I like the way you die, boy. Just greatest line ever uttered in a fucking movie. It happened again. I skipped over number 3. So let's move on to number 3, and that's 2016's Hell or High Water, starring one of the most underrated actors of all time, Ben Foster, who's just fucking awesome in this movie. I absolutely love him. Chris Pine also does a wonderful job as his brother, and they are a band of brother outlaw bandit bank robber guys trying to save their farm from the crooked bank that is, banks are. They're crooked, so they're robbing the banks to pay the banks the money that they robbed from the banks. And it's fucking awesome, and it's got one of the best performances from Jeff Bridges ever given by Jeff Bridges. And one of the best scenes in a movie ever, when they go in to this restaurant to order some steak dinners, and that's pretty much all they serve. You'd have to go back and watch my fucking review for it, which only has like 45 views for some ungodly known reason. Like, this movie is so fucking good, it makes me just want to punch somebody in the fucking face. If you haven't seen Hell or High Water, obviously, I highly recommend it. God, this is gonna be terrible. Doing the best I can, everybody. Number 2 is a movie that I do not own for some reason from 2012. It pisses me off because I don't own it and I've never seen it out in the wild, and I'm damned if I'm gonna order it off of fucking Amazon, even though it's only $7.99 the last time I looked. And that's Lawless, starring Shia LaBeouf. There's another guy that's on the fucking list already with the Peanut Butter Falcon, but it's also got Tom Hardy. Is he on the fucking list somewhere else? I feel like Tom Hardy should be on the list twice, because, there's Warrior that could have been an honorable mention, but I've only seen Warrior once, so I didn't want to throw it on here, even though it was one of the best movies I ever saw when I watched it. But then Lawless! Oh my god, this movie is just awesome. It's got, bootlegging, it's got fist fighting, it's badass. And Tom Hardy's character in this, what was his name? Frank something? Who cares? Who cares? I'd have to track the movie down and watch it again, but this movie has stuck with me. I rented this from the Redbox. I couldn't tell you how many times, and I hardly ever re-rent movies from the Redbox. But, I've never actually gone out and found the son of a bitch. But Lawless, just Shia LaBeouf's performance. It's even got that one kid that was in Chronicle and A Cure for Wellness. He's really good. He's like the, some kind of, he's like a clone baby of Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, he looks like he could be a young Leonardo DiCaprio. But that's all beside the point. But just Tom Hardy in this movie makes this movie so badass. Even though he's not like the main character, but just every scene he's in is fucking amazing. And I absolutely love this movie. And it's a movie that I love more than anything, and I don't own. Maybe I should just get over my ordering things from Amazon and just fucking order the goddamn thing. But Lawless, if you haven't seen Lawless, don't, squander your time like I have not owning it, and go out and buy that shit and watch it, because it is fucking phenomenal. Am I doing a good job? Mm-hmm. All right, everybody, I'm not going to waste any more of your time. We're going to get to number 1, the great... All right, anybody, I'm not going to waste any more of your time. We're going to get to number 1, the best movie of the decade. A movie that stuck with me, that I watched like twice in the same day the first time I saw it. And then rented it 2 more times that month and watched it probably a couple. I watched it infinitely amount of times because I was addicted to this movie and the performances in it. And that is 2014's Nightcrawler. Where the fuck is Jake Gyllenhaal's Oscar for this fucking performance? Where is Jake Gyllenhaal? He completely loses himself in this guy, and it's just crazy. It's madness. It starts out, he's just a, small-time con man trying to steal stolen copper and, stolen materials back to the construction site that he stole it from. And then he gets wind of, this videographer stuff where people follow the news around and film for the nighttime news. And then he goes and he steals a bike and he pawns it for a camera, and he starts out small and he gets really good at it. He gets so good at it, in fact, that he stops going out looking for the stuff and starts going out causing the stuff. And it's just like a spiral into fucking madness. And just, oh, the directing and the lighting, the cinematography. This is like everything I love about a movie. Like this, possibly on my favorite movies of all time. Like, definitely on my favorite movies of all time, because, you know, there's so many decades in a lifetime. But, yeah, just the directing. Did I mention the directing? And then the worst thing about this movie is the director's follow-up, Velvet Buzzsaw, was like one of the biggest disappointments of my entire life. That movie should have been awesome, just like Nightcrawler, and then it ends up just being mediocre at best. But then again, I don't know, maybe I should watch it again. This is one that, you know, right after I watched it, I knew. Because then I watched it a couple hours later, just to make sure I was right. And I was. This movie is goddamn epic. And I know a couple people out there that don't like this movie, and, you know, that's fine. Because I don't like you. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, that's my list. I'm sure it's different from your list. So if you have a list, just go ahead and leave that in the comments section down below. Let me know if you've liked this video, and be sure to subscribe. That way I can see you for future videos if I so decide to make them. And then you can follow me on social medias and consider donating to my Patreon. Maybe it'll help get me out of this slump I'm in. I'm all depressed because it's January, ain't nothing but shitty movies coming out, it's fucking dark all the time, it's cold outside, I'm fucking tired, and my foot's asleep, and I got something in my eye, and I'm thirsty. Is that good?
Yeah, that's good.